Thank you for this opportunity to present our paper, A Tale of Steady Progress Towards a Sustainable Learning Community. I'd first like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land where we are speaking from and pay our respects to the learning, culture and sharing that has taken and will take place by their leaders past, present and emerging. My name is Diane Tabbagh. I'm the Coordinator of Learning Community at Wyndham Council. I have over 30 years local and international experience working in a variety of roles in community education, community development, refugee, asylum seeker, migrant banking and hospital environments in Australia, the United Kingdom and the Netherlands. I hold a Bachelor of Social Work with honours and a Bachelor of Economics, and I'm passionate about mobilising lifelong and life-wide learning as a driver of social, economic, environmental and cultural change. I'm fortunate to have worked as the Coordinator of Learning Community at Wyndham City Council in Victoria, Australia since October 2014, where I've overseen the development and implementation of Wyndham's learning community strategies. A major highlight was achieving Wyndham's recognition as a UNESCO Learning City. Other highlights have included the implementation of the Wyndham Learning Festival and the Global Learning Festival, with their strong foundation in effective partnerships.
I am Leone Wheeler, and I am the Honorary CEO of the Australian Learning Communities Network. This is a not-for-profit national network of leading-edge practitioners building sustainable communities using learning as a key element. I'm also an associate of the School of Global, Urban and Social Studies, RMIT University, and a board member of Pascal International Observatory. I hold a Doctor of Education from RMIT University in the area of learning networks and have published extensively in this field. I've worked as a researcher at the College of North Atlantic Qatar in Doha and as an academic manager and director at RMIT University and business educator in the secondary and tertiary sectors in Australia and New Zealand.
First, some context. Wyndham is located in southeastern Australia in the state of Victoria. Our boundaries cover areas of urban, rural and coastal development. The population of Wyndham is over 288,000 and we are one of the largest and fastest growing municipalities in our state and country. There are around 100 babies born every week. Almost half of all Wyndham residents were born overseas and are from 162 different countries. Wyndham City Council is a major employer in the area, employing over 900 people. Agriculture, construction, education and healthcare industries make up the other main areas of employment. Unfortunately, Wyndham recorded more cases of COVID-19 than any other council area in Australia. High numbers were largely due to major clusters in aged care facilities and an independent school and a significant population of vulnerable people. Despite this, we acknowledge that in a global context, Wyndham has fared relatively well, given current numbers of cases around the world. Wyndham experienced massive job losses during the pandemic. Other impacts included negative impacts on mental health and well-being, physical health impacts as a result of lockdowns, isolation, increased rates of anxiety and depression, and psychological distress. Wyndham's work as a member of the UNESCO Network of Learning Cities is driven by our Learning Community Strategy 2018 to 2023, with over 50 community partners delivering on 18 actions. The focus of the strategy is on celebrating living and learning in Wyndham, advocating for equality and quality in service provision, facilitating partnerships and collaboration across sectors, and innovating learning and fostering new entrepreneurial spirit. The latest strategy, with a theme of lifelong learning as the guiding principle, driving social, economic, environmental and cultural life. Youth unemployment, education attainment levels and the need for more local jobs are identified as key challenges. The strategy contains pragmatic action plans which are implemented in collaboration with key stakeholders and designed to provide opportunities to build skills for adaptation and resilience for the future.
Australia's history of learning community, learning city development are well documented in the literature, with a flurry of activity from about 1998 onwards. We were very excited and made the most of the government funding, which came from our own Victorian state government and the federal government. The Australian Learning Communities Network was established in 2001, and early funding enabled the movement to experiment and learn from our overseas colleagues, including Learning Communities movement in British Columbia and the United Kingdom. However, once the funding ran out, the momentum was not sustained for many of these communities. Nevertheless, lessons were documented. An Australian Learning Communities framework was developed, and good practice Australian case studies were published. The framework aligns with the UNESCO key features of learning cities and the introduction of the UNESCO Global Network of Learning Cities in Beijing in 2013. The Australian city of Melton soon joined the UNESCO network and received one of the first Learning Community City Awards with its case study. This informed the guidelines of building learning cities. Australian good practice examples were also featured in several international publications and on Pascal's international exchanges. Building on this knowledge, a learning community approach and learning community strategy was first adopted in Wyndham in 2006.
On screen, you will see an informatic of the critical incidents in Wyndham's journey towards becoming a learning city. 2006 saw the launch of the first learning community strategy, and an online learning portal, Leone, was launched in 2007, which highlighted learning opportunities across the municipality. Leone is currently undergoing a major revamp. A stronger community engagement process in 2013 led to a second learning community strategy, 2014 to 2017, which brought together the community's learning priorities, education theory, and Council's desire to improve social equity and create a sustainable vision for the future of Wyndham. Next followed the promise of Council resources behind its commitment to lifelong learning through the appointment of a coordinator learning community in 2014 to oversee the implementation of the strategy. This included a strong partnership approach to deliver the learning outcomes identified in the strategy and the development of an evaluation approach that measures the strengths and outcomes of these partnerships. The evolving and strengthening governance structure resulted in a dedicated Learning City Portfolio Committee that now aligned with other Council committees. 2016 saw the celebration of lifelong learning in the city through the first annual Wyndham Learning Festival. The Learning City Portfolio Committee was closely involved in the development of the current Learning Community Strategy 2018 to 2023, with a working group formed from committee members to guide, advise, and inform the strategy. The role of Council was defined in this strategy as one of advocacy, facilitation, exploration, initiation, and delivery. Wyndham City was officially accepted as a member of UNESCO's Global Network of Learning Cities in 2019, closely followed by a further commitment by Council through the appointment of a Learning Community Officer, recognising the breadth and depth of the action plan. In the 15 years since Wyndham initiated its first Learning Community Strategy, planners have built on what has come before, consulted with learning experts and the citizens of Wyndham to adapt its strategies and actions for a local context. It is no surprise that the events that I've just highlighted are also key elements of the Australian Learning Community Framework and UNESCO's key features of learning cities. Wyndham City Council recognised and supported the rollout of Wyndham's Learning Community Strategy in alignment with the policies of Adult Learning Australia, the Australian Learning Communities Framework, UNESCO's key features of learning cities, and the United Nations Sustainability Goals. I'll now give some examples of the depth, array, and extent of collaboration of learning activities in Wyndham. I'd first like to talk about the Wyndham Learning Festival as vignette number 1. The result of a partnership between Wyndham Community and Education Centre and the Wyndham City Council, the Wyndham Learning Festival is now in its 6th year in 2021. The festival will be held from the 1st to the 5th of September this year, coinciding with Australia's Adult Learners Week, and provides the opportunity to showcase, recognise and celebrate learning across Wyndham. Upwards of 5,000 people have attended around 180 festival events in previous years. This year, a smaller, curated 55 events will be on offer, ensuring a truly accessible and diverse festival. The festival provides opportunities for free learning activities across the City of Wyndham for all ages and interests, promoting lifelong learning for all and welcoming new events, sponsors and participants to reflect this diverse and dynamic learning community. Learning festival activities in the past have included Aboriginal culture, cooking, dancing, gardening, painting, learning Spanish, learning English, ceramics, music therapy, and inspirational stories of refugee survival, amongst others. Festival event providers have included clubs, groups, individuals, businesses, schools, early learning centres, community centres, libraries, higher education providers, art spaces, and more. The festival encourages the community to try new things in both formal and informal learning settings. The next vignette I'd like to talk about is the Acknowledgement to Country. Since 2018, all kindergartens in Wyndham have incorporated an Acknowledgement to Country at the start of their day. An Acknowledgement of Country is an act of respect for the continuing connection of Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander traditional owners and custodians to the land on which the early learning service, in this example, stands. In 2016, the State Department of Education and Training published Marung, the Aboriginal Education Plan from 2016 to 2026, which set out a 10-year vision identifying significant actions to be taken to improve educational outcomes for Aboriginal peoples in the long term. Marung's vision is for Victoria to be a state where the rich and thriving culture, knowledge and experiences of our Aboriginal people are celebrated by all Victorians. Through the implementation of Marung, Wyndham early learning service providers highlight everyday practices that embed and respect Aboriginal perspectives and cultures. Collaborative practices and strengths of the educator teams are combined at each kindergarten service. Wyndham kindergarten children grow up with a deeper knowledge, understanding and appreciation of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander histories and cultures. Indeed, the children have an expectation that these traditions will be recognised in the same way once they get to primary school. Through a presentation to the Wyndham school principals, kindergarten staff were able to inspire schools with their award-winning journey and to invite them to create their own reconciliation action plan for their own school, to reach out to their local kindergarten for support in this process and to share resources.
In thinking about the journey that Wyndham has taken, what I reflect on was that adult educators were there right from the beginning, guiding Diane as the coordinator of the learning community and members of the Learning Community Portfolio Committee. It is therefore no surprise that a lifelong learning approach has been taken in the development of the strategy. Also, adult educators such as my colleague Dr. Shanti Wong, who has written extensively on her own Learning City work, recommended an action learning, action research approach to this work. The informatics demonstrates the action research cycle: plan, act, observe, and reflect, especially on key events. The vignettes that Diane spoke about illustrate further the depth of learning experiences, the array of learning opportunities, the different time frames, and most importantly, the extent of collaboration. The need to measure the strength and output of partnership outcomes was considered, and a collective impact assessment tool was developed. Diane will talk about this in the next slide, but I note that the tool was influenced by Australian State Government's Victorian Health Department's Partnership Assessment Tool, elements of the Competence Learning Index developed by the Canadian Council of Learning, and also Preisinger-Kleiner, who developed an analytical quality framework for learning cities and regions, and previous work by Kara and Ranson on partnerships in the UK in 1998.
Collaboration and community engagement are crucial in the development and evaluation of the Wyndham learning community. The current and previous learning community strategies were created through a process of listening to what the community valued in the previous strategy, and during the process, identifying learning priorities for the future of Wyndham. The evaluation of the previous strategy took place in early 2018. The aim was to assess how effective that strategy had been in creating and facilitating learning partnerships, engaging the community in learning, and delivering learning outcomes that positioned Wyndham for the future. After extensive consultation with stakeholders and analysis of the available data, a major finding was that the strategy had acted as a catalyst for facilitating the implementation of a number of learning initiatives, as well as to support and extend existing learning initiatives within the community. There were many recommendations from the evaluation that are being implemented in the current strategy, including the implementation of a 5-year term, the funding of a learning community officer to support the growing action plan, leveraging the success of the Learning Festival into promotion of other lifelong initiatives, keeping the concept of life stages as a mechanism for focusing actions of the strategy, and further developments of local leaders. The Collective Impact Assessment Tool, or CIAT, developed by the City of Melton in 2017, is a tool for measuring and evaluating the strength of partnerships in contributing to the achievement of collaborative projects. CIAT was applied successfully to the evaluation of the previous strategy, as you can see on the slide, as well as using it to evaluate each year's action plan of the current strategy and of specific projects within the action plan. CIAT generates consistent numerical data about subjective findings and provides baseline data. CIAT was able to quickly identify strong partnerships and those that needed more development.
A fully developed concept of a learning city has great promise to inform core theories and practices in the field of adult education. Some authors are critical of learning city developments, especially those that do not focus on an adult education lifelong learning approach. It is important not to misappropriate the term for self-interested purposes or for a marketing label. There are key ideas that come under the umbrella of the term of learning society. Education is not a segregated activity for a certain time and place. There is an acceptance of a learning culture, formal, non-formal, and informal learning using the lifelong and life-wide approach that encompasses the individuals, families, workplaces, and communities. The embedding of Indigenous knowledge is very relevant for Australia. Equity, fair and equitable access to learning, which should reflect the population in terms of gender, ethnicity, age, disability, migrant and refugee status, socioeconomic class, location. Also, increasingly, there are digital opportunities which enable access to 21st century skills, including emotional and social knowledge. Vitally, there must be collaboration across different sectors, such as local government, education, that includes kindergarten to the tertiary sector, community, business, public agencies such as libraries, museums, and health bodies. These concepts are evident in the learning community strategies and learning city journey undertaken by Wyndham. The key message from Wyndham is that the process of collaboration and community engagement is vital. Wyndham leaders understand the benefits of lifelong and life-wide learning. There is a strong governance model. Through successive learning community strategies, a collaborative approach to implementing the action plans and running the annual Learning Festival, Wyndham is building that learning culture. Wyndham has developed a pragmatic, asset-based approach which has mobilised the learning resources and expertise across the different sectors. While there is no specific regulations about lifelong learning for local governments in Australia, Wyndham links policies on lifelong learning to community strengthening, which is a vital area of work for individual empowerment, social cohesion, economic and cultural prosperity. UNESCO sees the Learning City concept as a person-centered, learning-focused approach that provides a collaborative, action-orientated framework for working on the diverse challenges related to sustainable development, including smart cities. The journey of the City of Wyndham has taken, as illustrated in the informatic, mirrors this approach. Boschier identifies that there is no one-size-fits-all learning city, and often a model is shaped by the city's location and the political orientation of the country. Boschier 2018 also noted areas for further research by learning cities. I think this is critical. One question he asks is, what can be done to interest lifelong learning advocates and adult education researchers in conceptual and operational issues related to learning cities? One idea is to document the process. This paper has illustrated that the City of Wyndham has underpinned their learning community city approach with adult education principles, including learning as a driver for change, and leaders, advocates, adult education researchers, and most importantly, practitioners in the field must communicate the benefits of this approach to residents, which is vital to maintain and sustain social participation, responsiveness, harmony, and prosperity. You can find more details about our projects on the Learning Community page on the Wyndham City Council website and also the Australian Learning Communities website. You can also reach out to us through email or LinkedIn. We love partnerships and cooking up innovative programs with our global partners. Thank you very much for listening to us.